Hi everyone, Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes here. Today we are going to continue working on our image. So this is our Bali landscape. We have started last Wednesday with this original image. We have applied luminosity adjustments, and today we are going to take this image step further and apply this color grading and add a little bit of final touches. Okay, so for those of you who haven't watched the previous part of this edit, the first part, you can download the original raw file and edit along with me, so I want to encourage you to do so. You can find the link in the description area. So in the previous clip, we have adjusted contrast and luminosity. Today, we are going to finish off this edit with adding some color adjustments, color grading, and some extra final touches, few more tricks. So let's begin working on color. As I've mentioned in the previous clip, this color grading is going to be quite complex, despite that our image is actually quite simple and quite monochromatic, but I want to achieve a bit more depth of color. So if we take a quick preview at the edited image, you can see that I have added here a little bit of these pinky orangey tones, so that way I'm working with complementary colors. I'm placing those warm tones that are visible here in those bright midtones and in the highlights, and that way I'm getting much more three-dimensional image, I'm getting much more depth. So let's add a new layer. I'm going to add new field adjustment layer, and I'm just going to rename it to color curves. And on this layer, I'm going to start coloring my image with the curves tool. I know that this is not super popular because you have the easy to use color balance tool, you have the color editor. However, I just have this habit of using curves in Photoshop, and I think that if you add a little bit of color grading with the curves tool, you are getting really unique looks and you are just getting deeper colors. This is my personal preference, and I would like to encourage you to try to use it, and if you like, stick to it. So on this level, we'll be working with the curves tool purely for color grading purpose. So on this layer, we've been working with contrast and luminosity adjustments. We've been touching the RGB and Luma curve. And on our layer color curves, we will be working only with these three channels, red, green, and blue. So let's start working with the red channel. Here I'm going to create a very subtle, very soft S-shaped curve. So that way I'm just adding a little bit more red to the highlights and to the bright midtones, and I'm just adding some cyans to the shadows and to darker midtones. So this is before and this is the after. We can perhaps go a little bit deeper here for the cyans. Okay, I don't want to overdo this. We can always get back and refine these adjustments. Let's now move over to the green channel. So the color that opposes green on the color wheel is magenta. And I don't want to add any greens to this image. So I'm going to create a control point here, which will be anchoring. And I will add one more control point around here, since I want to add a touch of magenta into my bright highlights. Something like this. Here the curve got lifted, so I can create one more control point and just slightly bring it back. So that way I'm not adding any greens into my shadows nor dark midtones. So again, this is before and after. Let's jump to the blue channel now, and here as well I'm going to create an anchor point, but I will be adding the same blue color to the highlights and to the shadows, to the dark midtones, but I just want to keep my midtones neutral. I don't want to inject blue nor yellow to the midtones, because as you know, the color that opposes blue in the color wheel is yellow. So if I add one control point here in the highlights, and if I push it upwards, I will add tiny little bit of blues into my highlights. And if I do the same here in the dark midtones area, I will make them stronger, I will make them more blue. Okay, so let's take a look at the before and after. So this is the image before applying color grading with the curves, and this is the after. So as you can see, we have managed to deepen these blues. We have managed to deepen those shadows here, those dark midtones in the clouds area, but we have enriched the color a lot as well. So let's now move over to the color balance tool. So I'm going to add another new field adjustment layer, and let's just rename it to color balance. And from here, let's just find our color balance tool. I can't see it, so I will just make a new one. So here it is, and let's just pull it out. So here with this tool, first of all, I want to make this image warmer. So when it comes to the master look, I want to inject a little bit of this orangey yellowish tone, something around here. So this is before and this is the after. So I'm getting these more muted colors. Let's now jump over to the shadows, and in the shadow area I want to try to maybe inject a little bit of red, so I will get this nice warmer look for the shadows. So as you know, with the shadow, midtone and highlight range, apart from injecting specific color into this luminosity range, you can as well brighten or darken this range. So let's start with injecting the color. I said I just want to go for a little bit of red. So let's go for something like this. This is not much visible because we have our shadows still very, very dark. So I'm going to actually use this slider here and push this handle upwards. So I will be lifting my shadows. I will be going for a little bit, I would say, matte effect, and that way this red color is more visible. So I'm getting this nice, warm, very, very deep, very rich, sort of brownish colors for the shadows. So that way, remember, you can always work with luminosity ranges, you can brighten or darken them. So when it comes to the mid-tone range, I will add a little bit of reds as well. So let's go for something around here, a little bit maybe more towards the oranges, and I want to actually darken the highlights in the image. So let's get maybe a little bit more saturated look, something like this. And let's see if we go darker. Actually, no. So something like that looks really, really well. Okay, so this is before and after applying the color balance tool. And let's now add one more field adjustment layer. So here, let's just rename it to color editor. And the color editor we will use to finish color grading. So if we are not happy with any specific color in the image, now we can target that very specific color and adjust it to our liking. So let's just pull out our color editor and let's go for the advanced. So as the very first step, let's add this generic wheel, and now typically I would just go a little bit lower with saturation, so we will get more of these darker and silverish tones without oversaturated colors. Okay, so right now I might try to balance out a little bit those bright cyans visible here in the upper left corner and those darker blues that contain a lot of magenta. So I'm going to get the picker and sample somewhere around here and try to actually push this color towards more greenish, more cyanish look. So let's click on this icon. That way we'll make sure that the whole saturation range is included. And let's just check. Let's see the selected color range. So basically anything that is not grayed out is included in my selected color range. So I want to exclude those cyans if possible. So I will be pushing this handle downwards. So this worked a little bit, but I haven't managed to do this entirely here. So let's just try to manipulate and we'll see what happens. So if I push the hue slider towards the left, I will be adding more cyan. So okay, this is changing my clouds at the bottom without affecting too much those tones here at the top. So let's see the before and after. Okay, so I can say that this did the trick. Let's see if we manipulate with lightness. No, this is way too much. Maybe we can, let's just zero out. And again, if I just push it very, very slightly, let's actually highlight the number here and go with the arrows on the keyboard. So we can be much more precise. So this is before and this is the after. Okay, I'm going to actually adjust the final contrast in my last layer. Right now, I just wanted to cool down a little bit this color and get rid of those magentas that were visible here. Okay, so when it comes to color grading, I'm very happy with the results I have achieved. So let's just switch off those layers that we have created today. So last Wednesday we have dropped here after manipulating with luminosities. So this was again original image. We went towards this place and today we have manipulated with colors. So first we've been working with curves, then with the color balance tool, and now we've been working with the color editor tool. So right now what I like to do is to add those very subtle pinkish tones that were reflected from the setting sun. So I would like to apply a little bit of these pinkish tones only over the brightest areas in this image. And to do this, I'm going to work super quickly with the Luma mask tool. So let's create new field adjustment layer. And now after we have created the layer and it's filled with the mask, this is important, let's hit the Luma range button. So here I'm just going to create a mask that will include only the brightest parts of the clouds. So let's hit this button to see the mask, display mask, and now all we need to do is to restrict the mask. So let's go for something like this, and we can operate with the radius slider as well to have more precision. So something like this. Let's maybe push this one to restrict the range and go for a little bit more of these brightest midtones. So let's just hit the apply button. So this is our mask. On this very layer we have our mask applied. So if we hit M on the keyboard, this is the preview of our mask. So now I'm going to add a little bit of this pinkish tone over the brightest part of the clouds, and I will be using the color balance tool. So let's jump right into the midtone tab. And here I will go for something between the reds and magentas. So I just want to go for this really subtle effect. I just want to enrich this image a bit to add this complementary color that will nicely create more color contrast in this image. Okay, so with the color balance tool we got this effect, and now we are going to add the very last final adjustment layer on which we will perform the final adjustments, final touches. So let's just rename this layer to final touches to keep things tidy and organized. So here I want to manipulate a little bit with contrast. I don't want to go back to the curves that I have used before. I just want to apply my final RGB curve and adjust contrast a little bit on top of all the adjustments, on top of the whole color grading that I have performed. I like working that way, that's my preference. I just like to have all these layers and to have the possibility of switching them off and on to see how the particular adjustments are affecting my image, and to have the possibility of really finding them fast and tweaking if needed. So on my last layer, I'm going to get back to curves. So let's just find where I have left the curve last time. So I'm going to be manipulating with the RGB curve, since I want to add still a tiny bit more contrast and a bit of saturation, extra saturation to the image. So let's maybe create a control point around here. Let's lift this up a bit. I'm going to flatten the highlights to get this creamy, softer look, something around this, and to darken the dark midtones and to get a little bit more contrast. I'm going to create one more control point around this area. Okay, so this is before and after applying curves. Now I will add a bit of vignette, so let's move all the way down inside the exposure tool, and here in the vignetting I'm just going to push this slider towards the left, so that way I will create this darker frame that will create this much more dramatic effect. And that way, since I have cropped this image out of much wider frame, and typically if you are not cropping your image, you will have very often a bit of vignette that is coming in a natural way from your lens. And here, since we have created this crop out of wider frame, we have no vignetting at all, and I think this will help a little bit to hold the composition. Maybe this is a little bit too much, maybe not. I can tweak it in the end. Right now I just want to add some clarity to this image. And when it comes to clarity, I will go for punch, because I want to still see how this will affect colors. So let's change method to punch, and let's manipulate with the clarity slider. So I want to go for the really contrasty look. Okay, this is too much. Maybe something around 35, maybe around 40. So now I can revisit my vignette and I can see, so this is without any vignette, this is with. So let's maybe make it a little bit brighter. Again, without and with. So the clarity, let's see, before and after. Okay, it is creating this very nice, strong contrast. It gives us this very strong, dramatic look. So after applying clarity, let's take a look at sharpening, because this image wasn't sharpened in post-production. Let's zoom in, so we will take a look at 100%. So that's the image before applying any sharpening, and we can still enhance this texture with a little bit of sharpening. So let's move over to the detail tab, and here in sharpening I'm going to move the amount. So this is after applying the sharpening. Let's take a look at the edges of the palm trees. So here we have the high risk of getting the halo, so let's try to reduce it with the last slider in sharpening, halo suppression. So I think I can go easily all the way to the right, so that way I have removed the halo and I can still have my sharpening in place. So let's see, this is before applying the sharpening, and this is the after. Okay, so let's zoom out and let's see. I think we can add a little bit of film grain to unify the final look and to make the image look a little bit less digital. And because we went for such a high clarity, we have a little bit of these artifacts visible here. So we can try to smoothen it out. We can maybe go for lower clarity value, or we can add a little bit of film grain, or both. So I'm going to go down with clarity. Let's try to reduce the value for sharpening. Okay, so I think this will be a good compromise, so a little bit lower with sharpening, and I'm going to add the film grain, and I will go for soft grain in this case. So let's see, let's go for a value. Okay, this is way too much. Let's maybe zoom out. We are now looking at the magnification level of 200%. Let's go for 100, and this is before applying the soft grain, and this is the after. So let's try silver rich. Okay, this will give us much more subtle effect, and I think it suits this image more. So let's take a look now at the curve. So I want to revisit my curves because I feel that the contrast is a little bit too strong. So let's just see. This is before my final touches and after. So I can manipulate with opacity value for that layer, but since I have applied many adjustments on this layer, this may not give me the best result, but I think it looks good. So if I go down with the opacity, I'm just making the image a little bit more smooth. So okay, I think I will go for lower opacity on this layer, but I will apply sharpening on a separate layer. So let's just zero it out here, and let's add one more adjustment layer, and here I will apply the extra sharpening. So on this layer, let's just quickly jump back to sharpening. Let's zoom in to 100%, and let's now observe. So let's take a look at the edges around the palm trees. So I just want to go for the nice texture for the clouds, however, without overdoing it. So I will manipulate with the halo suppression, so there are no artifacts around the palm trees, and okay, now everything looks perfect. So let's zoom out, and let's maybe, I would still make this image very tiny bit warmer. So let's just quickly jump over to our color balance layer. So this structure, renaming layers and keeping everything organized, it gives you very quick access if you want to revisit your layers and if you want to tweak them. So I want to try to add a little bit warmer tone to the overall channel, to the master tab here. I think this works better, and if I go for midtones, let's see, okay, something like this. Let's maybe go to color editor, and let's check if we reduce the saturation, if it will give us better results. So color editor, advanced, and I want to revisit this value here. We have -10. Let's see if I go still a little bit lower. So that way we are going more towards these silverish nice tones. Okay, so I think -20 gives really nice and pleasing result. So now if we hit Y on our keyboard, we will see the original image. This is the raw file that we have started with, and this is our final edit. So today we've been working on color grading the image. We've been working with curves, color balance, color editor. Remember that you can download the raw file and work along with me. The link to download the file is in the description of this video. If you like this sort of tutorials, you can check out my full course on Capture 120. You will find the link in the description as well. So that's it for now. That was Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes. Thanks for watching. See you, bye now.